Sarah rode into my life literally on the back of a Razor scooter. And it was covered in pictures of the guys who lived in the dorm next to me. It was our freshman year, and this was her way of seducing the guys next door. And I thought, wow, this girl is a freak, and I love her. And we became quick friends after that. You see, we were freshmen at Brigham Young University, a Mormon-owned university, and we prided ourselves living in what we call the Book of Mormon Belt. It's the Mormon equivalent of the Bible Belt, which incorporates Idaho, Utah, Nevada, Arizona. But we were from the East, and so we saw the world differently. And to prove that, we went on our first date to a meeting of the BYU Vegetarian Club, sponsored by the BYU Democrat Society. And if you know Mormonism, you know what a rare breed of human shows up at that meeting. And our minds just clicked. It was that she was the person I could throw a joke to. She'd throw it right back to me. And she wore this perfume that drove me crazy. It was Versace's Bright Crystal, in case there are any fans out there. But I knew by this point that I was attracted to men, but my very Orthodox Mormon upbringing had hardly provided the opportunity to experiment on that theory, and thus I just thought I was falling into what everyone else around me described as love. But there was a clock looming over our relationship because at the end of my freshman year, I knew I, like all good Mormon boys, would go on my Book of Mormon musical 2-year journey. And that's exactly what I did. I ended up being sent to Bolivia and Peru. But right before I left, Sarah and I promised that we would write one another and that our correspondence would become epic, like John and Abigail Adams. And we actually took to signing our letters, "Love John, love Abigail." Now, being a Mormon missionary, I'll tell you, is a very lonely experience. You spend the first 3 months in silence because you don't speak the language. And to be able to come home to a letter from someone meant the world. And Sarah would write me these 25, 35 front and back pages lathered in Versace Bright Crystal. And as I would smell the page, I would be taken out of the Bolivian countryside with its open trench sewer system, and I would just be transported back home where I was happy and I knew what was actually going on. Those 2 years flew by and I returned. And I remember sitting down for our first date after this long, long period so far apart and knowing that I could not be for her what we had planned on me being. And I was disappointed in myself, but too embarrassed to tell her. So I came up with a plan that I would essentially make her dislike me so much that she would break up with me instead of me breaking up with her. So one night at a party, I pretended to be interested in one of her friends. And as we were driving home, she said, what was that? Like, what is going on? And I had no answer. I said, what? I threw it back on her. I made her feel like she was going crazy because I was too much of a coward to say what was actually happening. As she was about to drop me off, our relationship now in pieces in front of me, she said to me, "Craig, I'm only going to ask you this once." She said, "Are you gay?" And I replied, "No." She said, "No? What the is that?" And she kept driving, and she drove and drove until she had parked in the parking lot of a brightly lit Mormon temple. And there, for the first time in my life, I came out to someone, and I told her how embarrassed I was, how I felt like I had led her on for 2 years, thinking I would come back and be this thing that she thought I would be, and I wasn't. I told her how I felt like I was losing my faith and I could point to this Mormon temple and say, I'm losing everything that means to me. And she listened to me. She cried with me. She was so kind to me. In the next weeks, we didn't really talk much, but after about a month, during which we say we emotionally broke up, she reemerged as a friend. And she introduced me to my first gay friends. She, in a way, shepherded me out of the closet and into a life that was fulfilling for me. And I will always be grateful to her for that. I thought I would never be able to repay Sarah. And then almost 10 years after she first helped me out, she called me on the phone and told me she had just started to date her first girlfriend and needed some advice. Thank you.
Give it up for Craig, people.